I'm Pranamya, and you're watching Pages of the Globe. Alright, so if you're new to my channel, I'm Pranamya, and every day on my channel I read stories, I give analyses about them, I tell you a little bit about the author, and yeah, we have a lot of fun with my 100 subscribers. Now, before you scroll away and you're like, oh, I don't want to see, a short story being read and analyzed by a 10-year-old, A, I can promise you I am not a 10-year-old, and B, if you have questions, you can always check out my intro video that is pinned to the top of my channel, or at least it should be. And if you don't want to watch it, the quick rundown of it is basically, I promise you I'm not 10 years old, and I actually can read and give you analyses about short stories. I tend to give some very deep, thought-provoking questions, at least I like to think so myself, and I will almost always provide some historical context of each story. Without further ado, let's get on with the introduction. Alright, so the story that we are going to be reading today is The Pedestrian by Ray Bradbury. Now, we have read a lot of Ray Bradbury before on this channel. He was a highly influential American author known for his contributions to the science, fiction, and fantasy genres. Some key facts about him are, he was born in 1920 in Illinois and passed away in 2012 in Los Angeles, California. Some notable works that you have most probably read by him is Fahrenheit 451 or 451, which is a dystopian novel about a future where books are banned and quote-unquote firemen burn any that are found. He also wrote The Martian Chronicles, published in 1950, which is a collection of late short stories about the colonization of Mars. And then he also wrote Something Wicked This Way Comes, published in 1962, which is a dark fantasy novel about two boys and a sinister traveling carnival. He has won many awards, and he has a huge influence, as his work has had a significant impact on literature, film, and popular culture. His imaginative and thought-provoking stories often explore themes of censorship, technology, and human nature. Now, as for his legacy, he is considered to be one of the greatest science fiction writers of all time, and his works continue to be read and studied widely. Now, as for The Pedestrian, the short story that we are going to be reading today, it was first published in 1951. The story is set in a dystopian future where technology dominates daily life and human interaction has significantly diminished. Like I said before, it was published in 1951 in the 1951 issue of The Reporter magazine. And it is set in the year 2053. However, the historical context of it is that it was written during the early 1950s, so the story reflects kind of post-World War II anxieties about technology and its potential impact on society. This era saw rapid advancements in television and automation, and Bradbury's story captures concerns about the loss of individuality and human connection in the face of technological progress. This was the era where we were getting a lot of films and stories about what would happen if robots took over the world and things like that. And you'll see a lot of Bradbury's stories kind of showcase things like this. They almost always have this sort of dystopian future where technology and humans are kind of coming head to head. There's always a human versus machine trope, almost always, in a lot of the short stories that he has written and the stories that we read today. Without further ado, let's get on with the story. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below which short story you would like me to read next.
The Pedestrian by Ray Bradbury. To enter out into that silence that was the city at 8 o'clock of a misty evening in November, to put your feet upon that buckling concrete walk, to step over grassy seams and make your way, hands in pockets, through the silences, that was what Mr. Leonard Mead most dearly loved to do. He would stand upon the corner of an intersection and peer down long moonlit avenues of sidewalk in 4 directions, deciding which way to go. But it really made no difference. He was alone in this world of AD 2053, or as good as alone, and with a final decision made, a path selected, he would stride off, sending patterns of frosty air before him, like the smoke of a cigar. Sometimes he would walk for hours and miles, and return only at midnight to his house. And on his way he would see the cottages and homes with their dark windows, and it was not unequal to walking through a graveyard where only the faintest glimmers of firefly light appeared in flickers behind the windows. Sudden gray phantoms seemed to manifest upon inner room walls where a curtain was still undrawn against the night, or there were whisperings and murmurs where a window in a tomb-like building was still open. Mr. Leonard Mead would pause, cock his head, listen, look, and march on, his feet making no noise on the lumpy walk. For long ago he had wisely changed his sneakers when strolling at night, because the dogs, in intermittent squads, would parallel his journey with barkings if he wore hard heels, and lights might click on and faces appear, and an entire street be startled by the passing of a lone figure himself in the early November evening. On this particular evening, he began his journey in a westerly direction toward the hidden sea. There was a good crystal frost in the air. It cut the noise and made lungs blaze like a Christmas tree inside. You could feel the cold light going on and off, all the branches filled with invisible snow. He listened to the faint push of his soft shoes through the autumn leaves with satisfaction, and whistled a cold, quiet whistle between his teeth, occasionally picking up a leaf as he passed, examining its skeletal pattern in the infrequent lamplights as he went on, smelling its rustic smell. "Hello in there," he whispered to every house on every side as he moved. "What's up tonight on Channel 4, Channel 7, Channel 9? Where are the cowboys rushing? And do I see the United States cavalry over the next hill to rescue?" The street was silent, long, and empty, with only his shadow moving like the shadow of a hawk in mid-country. If he closed his eyes and stood very still, frozen, he could imagine himself upon the center of a plain, a wintry, windless Arizona desert with no house in 1,000 miles, and only dry riverbeds, the streets, for company. "What is it now?" he asked the houses, noticing his wristwatch. 8:30 p.m.? Time for a dozen assorted murders, a quiz, a review, a comedian falling off the stage. Was that a murmur of laughter from within the moon-white house? He hesitated, but went on when nothing more happened. He stumbled over a particularly uneven section of sidewalk. The cement was vanishing under flowers and grass. In 10 years of walking by day or night for thousands of miles, he had never met another person walking, not once in all that time. He came to a clover-leaf intersection which stood silent, where two main highways surge of cars, the gas stations open, a great insect rustling, and a ceaseless jockeying for position as the scarab beetles, a faint incense puttering from their exhausts, skim homeward to the far directions. But now, these highways, too, were like streams in a dry season, all stone and bed and moon radiance. He turned back on a side street, circling around toward his home. He was within a block of his destination when the lone car turned a corner quite suddenly and flashed a fierce white cone of light upon him. He stood entranced, not unlike a night moth, stunned by the illumination, and then drawn toward it. A metallic voice called to him. "Stand still! Stay where you are! Don't move!" He halted. "Put your hands up!" But, he said, "Put your hands up, or we'll shoot." The police, of course. But what a rare, incredible thing. In a city of 3 million, there was only one police car left. Wasn't that correct? Ever since a year ago, 2052, the election year, the force had been cut down from 3 cars to 1. Crime was ebbing. There was no need now for the police, save for this one lone car wandering the empty streets. "Your name?" said the police car in a metallic whisper. He couldn't see the men in it for the bright light in his eyes. "Leonard Mead," he said. "Speak up." "Leonard Mead." "Business or profession?" "I guess you'd call me a writer." "No profession," said the police car, as if talking to itself. The light held him fixed like a museum specimen, needle thrust through his chest. "You might say that," said Mr. Mead. He hadn't written for years. Magazines and books didn't sell anymore. Everything went on in the tomb-like houses at night, he thought, continuing his fancy. The tombs, ill-lit by television light, where the people sat like the dead, the gray or multicolored lights touching their faces, but never really touching them. "No profession," said the phonograph voice, hissing. "What are you doing out?" "Walking," said Leonard Mead. "Walking?" "Just walking," he said simply, but his face felt cold. "Walking? Just walking? Walking?" "Yes, sir. Walking where? For what?" "Walking for air. Walking to sea." "Your address?" 11 South St. James Street. "And there is air in your house. You have an air conditioner, Mr. Mead?" "Yes." "And you have a viewing screen in your house to see with?" "No." "No?" There was a crackling quiet, and that itself was an accusation. "Are you married, Mr. Mead?" "No." "Not married," said the police voice behind the fiery beam. The moon was high and clear among the stars, and the houses were gray and silent. "Nobody wanted me," said Leonard Mead with a smile. "Don't speak unless you're spoken to." Leonard Mead waited in the cold night. "Just walking, Mr. Mead?" "Yes, but you haven't explained for what purpose." "I explained. For air, and to see, and just to walk." "Have you done this often?" "Every night for years." The police car sat in the center of the street with its radio throat faintly humming. "Well, Mr. Mead," it said. "Is that all?" he asked politely. "Yes," said the voice. "Here." There was a sigh, a pop. The back door of the car sprang wide. "Get in." "Wait a minute, I haven't done anything." "Get in." "I protest." "Mr. Mead." He walked like a man suddenly drunk. As he passed the front window of the car, he looked in. As he had expected, there was no one in the front seat. No one in the car at all. "Get in." He put his hand to the door and peered into the back seat, which was a little cell, a little black jail with bars. It smelled of riveted steel. It smelled of harsh antiseptic. It smelled too clean and hard and metallic. There was nothing soft there. "Now, if you had a wife to give you an alibi," said the iron voice. "But where are you taking me?" The car hesitated, or rather gave a faint whirring click, as if information somewhere was dropping card by punch-slotted card under electric eyes. "To the Psychiatric Center for Research on Regressive Tendencies." He got in. The door shut with a soft thud. The police car rolled through the night avenues, flashing its dim lights ahead. They passed one house on one street a moment later. One house and an entire city of houses that were all dark. But this one particular house had all its electric lights brightly lit. Every window a loud yellow illumination, square and warm in the cool darkness. "That's my house," said Leonard Mead. No one answered him. The car moved down the empty riverbed streets and off away, leaving the empty streets with the empty sidewalks, and no sound and no motion all the rest of the chill November night. The end. All right, so that was The Pedestrian by Ray Bradbury. Now, before I jump straight to the analysis, I'm going to give you a quick summary. So what happens in the story? Well, we see Leonard Mead, who loves to take these solitary evening walks throughout the city. Now, it's the year 2053 AD, and he is alone in the world. On these nights, he's going to walk for hours, passing these, dark houses, which to him is like walking through a graveyard. And all he sees are, flickers of lights or gray phantoms, or, murmurs from open windows of tomb-like buildings. When he walks, we see that his footsteps, they don't make any noise, because he, quote-unquote, wisely began wearing sneakers. Because if he wore hard-soled shoes, he would be noticed and disturbed by dogs or by neighbors who are startled by a passing lone figure in the street. Now, this particular night, Mead walks to the west, and we hear him just address the other citizens in their home, but he kind of whispers to himself, and he speculates what they're doing, and he's just kind of talking to himself. Now, at one point, we kind of see how he's turning towards his home, and he suddenly encounters a lone car that flashes like light on him, and it basically tells him like stop. And we're told that it is a police car. It's the city's only police car because it has a very small police force, and there's no need for a large one. And it just keeps asking him questions. It's very suspicious of him. And then at the end, it tells him to get in the car. And he's like, oh, I didn't even do anything. And he's like very surprised. And he's like, oh, I didn't even do anything. But it doesn't matter because he's still he has to get in. And when he asks where he's being taken, the car driver says, oh, you're being taken to the psychiatric center for research on regressive tendencies. And then at the very end, we see the car drive past the dark houses until it passes with Leonard Mead's house, which is the only one that has like light in it. And he says like, hey, that's my house. But the car doesn't reply, and it just continues to drive through the silent, empty streets. Now, this is a very interesting story because the reader is trying to figure out exactly what's happening. Most accomplished writers won't straight out tell you exactly what the setting is and exactly how the characters act. So we have to look for clues to figure out where we are. So we see that he describes himself as like the only person in the world. He's alone in the world. However, after a little bit more reading, we kind of realize that there are people in these houses maybe, but they're remaining indoors at night. Mead knows that in walking alone, he is failing to conform to the societal expectation that people will remain indoors at night. And they're lulling themselves with like television viewing and things like that. And the notion that people and even dogs would be startled to see something as unusual as a man walking alone shows how conformist the society is. The fact that wearing sneakers is quote-unquote wise points to the danger Mead might be were he discovered walking. He deliberately chooses defiance and nonconformity in order to preserve his chance to cultivate individuality on his walks. As he walks, he experiences the natural world around him, and his nonconformity is shown by his speech to the other residents. He's talking to himself rather than to them, showing perhaps that he longs for real communication but doesn't find it possible. His disconnection from the other citizens is reinforced when he thinks he can hear them inside but can't be sure. It's revealed that Mead has taken solitary walks like this one for 10 years, so they represent a recurring pattern of nonconformity and defiance of social norms. His reflections give background on the city environment. Now, the turning point of the story occurs when Mead meets a car that pins him with a bright light. The suddenness of this encounter conveys fear and foreboding. It spells danger for Mead. The simile comparing Mead to a moth shows that like the other citizens, Mead is in danger of losing his humanity at the hands of state authority. The voice from the car is not human, it's authoritative, and it's immediately recognizing me as a criminal. It's immediately kind of being very aggressive towards him almost. Now, when the car is interrogating Mead about his home life, we see more and more of Mead and how he does not fit into a society where people are held to strict expectations of proper behavior. Imagery of violence and an accusatory tone from the car, even in its silences, establishes that Mead is giving the wrong answers. His nonconformity is crossing the line into deviancy from the standards of society. Now, when he's asked where he's being taken, the story is finally makes clear what has been hinted at the descriptions of the car and its voice. It is actually inhuman, robotic, and operated remotely. As such, it shows the extent to which dehumanization has permeated this future world. As people have lost their humanity, insect-like by day, ghost-like by night, machines have become sentient, with the ability and power to make decisions with severe consequences. Mead's identification as regressive is quite ironic, to be honest, because technology and social progress have in fact caused the other citizens to regress. It's taken years, but the state has finally discovered Mead's efforts to preserve his individuality, and now he must pay the price. It is significant that Mead will not be merely punished, but studied. Presumably, the authorities will study him to further refine methods of social control and thereby avoid future deviancy. Now, Mead gets in the car willingly, knowing that he is powerless in the face of the state authority wielded by the car. He identifies his house to the uncaring robotic car as they drive past. His home is vibrant and bright, which contrasts with the tomb-like houses of the other citizens. It represents this oasis of life, joy, and creativity in the otherwise lifeless urban landscape. Unlike the story's opening, which saw Mead striding out confident and free into the streets, the story ends on a bleak and hopeless note with imagery, silence, coldness, and emptiness. Now, what are some themes we see? Well, we see technology, dehumanization, nonconformity, nature versus city. We see a lot. However, what is the main takeaway? Through the characterization and imagery of the pedestrian, Ray Bradbury has given a warning of what life might lie ahead if mankind relinquishes its humanity to progress. It would be a great loss to watch children grow into hard, cold police cars rather than warm, human Mr. Meads. I think what I found most, ironic about the story was he is literally ushered into a robotic police car and taken to the psychiatric center for research on regressive tendencies. This unexpected outcome is so crazy to me because it feels like the roles have been reversed in this world. This is a obviously very dystopian story, and it's not surprising to see Ray Bradbury writing stories like this. He's always written some stories that are almost always in the future, and they always have some sort of deep meaning behind them. I think the story is literally one of my favorites of his because even though it's so short, it has the writing just makes you feel so incredibly attached to Leonard Mead. I mean, I know as soon as the police car took him away, I literally could feel my heart sink and why is that? Well, we know that the police car is an automated robot almost, right? And so because we know this, it makes us more frustrated and angry to see it take away Leonard Mead because we think of ourselves as fighting against this automated machine. And I think that kind of man versus machine trope almost that we see often really just pulls at our heartstrings. Now, I don't want to keep talking, so I am going to end it here. Please share what your analysis and experience was with the story. And yeah, that's it for today. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below which short story you would like me to read next.